Anisha, please start. People are wondering why there is no audio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session of preventable cancers in women. Sorry, I just got muted again. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to our session of preventable cancers in women. This is a very complex disease. It causes a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty. It leads to a lot of panic. So, if there is any unfortunate incidents which happens around you, maybe in your family or your close friends, or maybe you, then you should know the details about this. So, this entire session is going to teach you and tell you everything that you should know. This is going to be conducted by our team. This is going to be conducted by a team of doctors, which is Dr. C.H. Asrani, Dr. Sushma Jaiswal Meher, Dr. Anisha Ramit, which is me, and Dr. Shrita Iyer. Let me first tell you how is our wellness and managed care, how do we provide it at Life Counts. So Life Counts, it is a brainchild of Dr. C.H. Asrani. It provides ethical, relevant, and empowering content digitally to health conscious Indian netizens. So we are actually developing content almost every day for dissipating and dispersing education. Each piece which is developed by Life Counts, each content part which is developed, it is crafted with deep research by a team of doctors, nutritionists, and counselors, which is led by Dr. C.H. Asrani. At Life Counts, we are committed to offer medical driven, personalized recommendations to elevate and better health. Now, when I'm talking about elevating and bettering health, so as I told you that we develop content almost on a daily basis. This content is given to you all via videos. We have small vlogs, which is video blogs. We have infographics. So we are uploading a new content every day on our Facebook and Instagram page. So we would request you to please follow us on our Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/lifecounts, or you can follow us on Instagram as well, which is www.instagram.com/lifecounts. Now, let me start introducing our first speaker, which is Dr. C.H. Asrani. Dr. C.H. Asrani brings to the table an extensive experiential knowledge. So, he has active clinical practice since 43 years, which many of you must be knowing. And he has been training individuals across wellness management. So, he not only gives consultation, but he has been training individuals, like he teaches people various methodologies. He has successfully explained patients on various aspects of health and wellness. Over the years, he has dissipated his knowledge via numerous programs and editorials, educating and benefiting lakhs of people. Now, I'm trying to be very modest here, but we have lost count of how many programs and editorials Dr. Asrani has done. Last, what we counted, we actually reached 648, and we are still counting, and there are many more to come. So he has dissipated his knowledge across so many sessions, so many programs and editorials, and has benefited lakh of individuals. Now I'm going to hand over the controls to Dr. Asrani. He is going to start with the basics of cancer. Thank you.
Cancer, a very dreaded word. Ask anyone who has faced it in the family. There are a lot of stories of cancer survivors, but for every survivor, maybe close to 100 have perished. Some soon, some with lot of suffering. Anybody who has cancer, they have to fight two battles. One is the disease, one is social. In our country, everybody loves to advise. People call up cancer patients and actually bombard them with ideas of don't do this, don't do this, do this, go to that Baba, he'll cure you, take this diet, take alkaline diet, take acidic diet. And it is really, really, really confusing. So, as a part of our community initiative, Life Counts, we did a program 2 months back on breast lump. So, we thought we will do some more on women health because women in our country are a largely neglected lot. They always look after their families, their husband, their children, but ignore them. So before we talk of specific cancers, let me just give a brief into what exactly is cancer. Before you understand what is cancer, understand what happens in a normal, healthy adult. Under normal circumstances, new cells are formed, they mature, they carry out their intended function, and then they die. New cells are constantly being made as we are talking. In that time that I finished one sentence, maybe some 50, 60,000 or maybe 1 lakh cells must have got regenerated in my body. These cells are to replace the dying cells so that the normal function is carried out. And this mechanism of old cells dying and new cells replacing is the best thing that nature could do to us. Now, cancer represents the disturbance of this process, which can occur in various ways. Either cells will not form, or they will not form of a normal variety, or they will not die, or they will die too soon. So cancer is a disease which is characterized by a population of cell, a number of cells which grow and divide without respect to normal limits. As I said, अगर 1 लाख सेल्स मरेंगे तो 1 लाख और तैयार होंगे और उसी जगह पे जाके बैठेंगे जहां पहले मरे हैं. This system, this pattern is disturbed. If I cut my hair, the hair cells will grow on that hair only. But now the cells grow outside their limit. They invade. Invasion is, as we've been talking on our borders, enemy invades. Go into a territory which is not yours. ये मेरा घर नहीं है लेकिन फिर भी मैं वहां जाकर बैठूंगा. They destroy adjacent tissue. हमारे पास जो है नजदीक में उसको हम डिस्ट्रॉय करेंगे and then spread to distant body sites through a process called metastasis. We'll be telling you in detail. If certain words are confusing, don't worry. To give an example, I'll see this. This is an open space which maybe you can see from your balcony. एक दिन एक आदमी ने आके एक झोपड़ा बना दिया. आप 1 महीना गांव चले गए. When you come back, you see this. Multiplying without any reason, without any sense of orderliness, no limits. It can just go. And then it invades on other people's territory. दूसरों की जगह पे भी कब्जा होके वहां जाता है. That is cancer. This housing is actually cancer to the society. And see, it just keeps increasing. There is no sense of growth. This life-threatening, malignant is a word of a cancer which is life-threatening. So normally we hear a term called tumor. A tumor is a growth which can be benign, B-E-N-I-G-N, that means non-cancerous. It is harmless, it grows, but it does not invade. It does not spread to other side. It does not destroy the surrounding tissue. Whereas malignant is cancer, it invades, it destroys, and it spreads to distant locations. Let's look at how cancer formed. Carcinogenesis is a word which literally means creation of a cancer. It is a process by which normal cells are transformed into cancer cells. When we are asked, Doctor, cancer can occur where? So we say cancer can occur in every part of the body. It can occur in your skin, in your nails, in your mouth, in your teeth, in your gums, in your stomach. Everywhere it can occur. So the normal cells, जो body में normal cell हैं, they become cancerous, and we will see how that happens. Why cancer occurs? I'm sorry, a single cause cannot be told you. That okay, ये avoid करेंगे तो cancer नहीं होगा. No, there are a lot of things that can lead to cancer. It's a disease of genes. I will say only this much because that itself is a one-day talk, how it is a disease of genes. Now look at this picture. These are normal cells. आप देखिए कितने orderly हैं. Same type, same color, same size, or how symmetrically they are arranged. And then top, this white like beige color line you see, that is a membrane. Inside of this there are cells, outside there is nothing. Then a stage comes when they grow more in number. Now you see they become more in number, and somewhere कोई cell देखिए टेढ़ा है, ये cell इससे बड़ा है, size different है. This is called hyperplasia. मतलब ज्यादा growth. Hyper is more, plasia is growth. As compared to this is more growth. बट आप ध्यान से देखेंगे ना तो इसका सेल कलर इसका सेल बिल्कुल सिमिलर है. साइज में थोड़ा डिफरेंस है, नंबर्स ज्यादा हैं. हाइपरप्लेजिया. प्लेजिया इज ग्रोथ, हाइपर इज मोर. नेक्स्ट स्टेज इज डिस्प्लेजिया. अब आप देखेंगे ना सेल के साइज डिफरेंट हो रहे हैं. ये बीच बीच में जो डार्क दिख रहा है ये सेल एबनॉर्मल होते जा रहे हैं. This is abnormality, abnormal growth. A growth which is different than compared to the normal. Normal से अलग growth dysplasia है और इसको हम लोग कहते हैं प्री कैंसर स्टेज. अगर यहाँ डिस्प्लेजिया शुरू हुआ और अगर हमने उसको रोका नहीं और ध्यान नहीं दिया तो आगे चल के ये कैंसर बनेगा, बन सकता है. हर डिस्प्लेजिया कैंसर बनेगा ऐसा नहीं है, बट ये कैंसर बन सकता है. उसकी नेक्स्ट स्टेज है कार्सिनोमा इन सिटू. अब ये कैंसर बन चुका है. आप अगर देखो these cells are totally different from these cells. The color, the cell, the shape, size, border, color, everything is different. This is cancer in situ. I'll tell you C2 का मीनिंग क्या है. ये माइल्ड डिस्प्लेजिया था, ये सीवियर डिस्प्लेजिया हो गया है. लेकिन ये जो मेम्ब्रेन आपको दिख रही थी ना, जो इसको कंट्रोल में रखी थी, सब कुछ इसके अंदर था. अब ये कैंसर है लेकिन ये मेम्ब्रेन के अंदर है. इन सीटू का मतलब है कि उसी एरिया में रुका हुआ है, अभी तक फैलने नहीं पाया. इट हैज नॉट स्प्रेड. और नेक्स्ट स्टेज है इन्वेजिव कैंसर. ये यहां से देखिए बाहर जाके फैलने लगा है. इट हैज स्टार्टेड इन्वेडिंग द सराउंडिंग टिश्यू. सो नॉर्मल सेल, excessive growth, little abnormal growth, more abnormal growth, and carcinoma, but in situ it is still restricted within, it is not invading, and this is invasive cancer. It has invaded surrounding thing. So this is how from normal to invasive cancer develops. Another thing I'll show you, ये नॉर्मल सेल हैं. आप देखो तीनों सेल हैं, उनका आउटलाइन कितना क्लियर है, ये बीच में जो न्यूक्लियस कहा जाता है बिल्कुल सिमिलर है, और ये कैंसर सेल हैं। अब देखो इनका शेप अलग है, यहाँ पर एक सेल में एक न्यूक्लियस है, यहाँ एक सेल में दो न्यूक्लियस हो गए, डार्क कलर हो गया, शेप इरेगुलर हो गई। ये नॉर्मल है, ये कैंसर है। और ये हुआ कैसे? ये 5 स्टेज से हुआ। वेयर एंड टेयर, वेयर एंड टेयर का मतलब हम लोग कुछ भी चीज यूज करते हैं, वॉट एवर वी यूज इट गेट्स टॉर्न, हमारे कपड़े घिस जाते हैं। सिमिलरली हमारे बॉडी के सेल्स भी वेयर एंड टेयर होता है। आई हैड टोल्ड यू अर्लियर that cells die, cells get regenerated. Cell proliferation is a normal process that occurs in all tissues. New cells forming and its growth happening in all tissues. Normally, as I said before, balance between new cell and the death is programmed in so well that it is totally regulated. As I said, 1,07,000 cells die, 1,07,000 cells will be made in that place only. This process is called apoptosis. When normal cells are damaged beyond repair, they are eliminated by apoptosis. अब देखो, अगर ये इतने सेल हैं, इसमें एक सेल की डेथ हुई, ये सेल चला जाएगा, next cell will form here only of this type only. Apoptosis then is programmed death of a cell. It is destined कि ये सेल इस टाइम मरेगा और उसके बदले दूसरा सेल आएगा. Involves an orchestrated series of events leading to cell death and replacement by the same number of normal cell at that place only. And this is going to shock you. 5,000 to 7,000 crore cells die every day. In 24 hours in our body, 5,000 to 7,000 crore cells are dying due to apoptosis, and that many cells are being replaced. That is the way the machine is working. So if you take these number of cells now, suppose I am 100 kilos of weight, in my entire lifetime, 100 kilos of cells will be kind of dying and will be rebuilt. So you can understand the speed with which cells are forming. Now you just imagine 7,000 cells died today. आज 7,000 सेल मरे और 15,000 सेल बने. जगह कहाँ रखने की? That is cancer. This is apoptosis. One cell dying, eliminated and replaced. Cancer cells avoid apoptosis and they continue to multiply in an unregulated manner. So this one cancer cell will become not apoptosis like, it will not die, keep multiplying. Again, to show normal cells and cancer cells. The shape is different, the color is different, the cell is different, and the nucleus is different. Then one term you should know, in situ cancer. Why we as a doctor keep telling patients, do your checkups, because if anybody is going to get cancer, we want to pick up fast, and if possible, we want to pick up in situ stage. Now see, this is the normal cell, this is the cancer cell, but there is a wall and it is inside this. Removing this cancer can lead to total cure of cancer in that patient. But if this wall is broken and the cells come out, they enter the bloodstream, वो खून की नली के रास्ते और कहीं चले गए, that becomes invasive cancer. Then treating that is much more difficult than treating a in situ cancer. Then a word metastasis, cancer from where it starts can spread to various parts of the body. Like I'll give you this example. Here the primary cancer, the cancer when it started in the large intestine, and it has gone to liver, it has gone to lung, and maybe it will go to brain also. So this is ultimately the kind of a late stage, and then we say that, you know, treating this patient is almost, I will not say impossible, nothing is impossible in medicine, but very, very difficult, because I have to treat the main cancer, I have to treat the spreads also. Coming to cervical cancer, cervical is a word which people have heard with spondylitis, cervical spondylitis. Cervical actually means neck. So when we say cervical cancer, it does not mean cancer of our neck. I'll tell you what it means. This is the female genital apparatus. This is the location in a woman. This is the vagina. This is the uterus, tubes, and ovaries. And this part of the uterus, the neck of the uterus, is called the cervix. So that is why cancer of this part is called cervical cancer. So this cervical cancer is cancer of the neck of the uterus. This is the opening of the uterus. And this is the neck. So cancer of the neck of the uterus, or in Hindi garbhashay, or in common language said bachchedani, this is cervical cancer. It is not cancer of the neck. It is the fourth most common cancer in women. In 2018, estimated 5,70,000 women diagnosed with cervical cancer across the world, and 3,11,000 women died from this cancer. These statistics are from World Health Organization. When detected early and managed effectively, अगर जल्दी मालूम पड़ जाए और बराबर ट्रीटमेंट हो जाए, this is the most successful form of cancer to be treated. With a comprehensive approach, World Health Organization feels that if we try to prevent, screen, and treat, in 10 years, we can remove cervical cancer from being a public health problem. But the issue is this, that women do not go through screening tests. So when we say that we want to pick up early, why cervical cancer we are talking today first is because you can prevent it. There are tests which can tell me cervical cancer almost 10 years before it is to come in a woman. We just heard the word dysplasia, abnormal growth. So cervical cancer has a precancerous stage called cervical dysplasia. And I want to catch a patient, if she is getting cervical cancer, I want to catch at this stage. Abnormal growth of cells on the surface of the cervix. Although this is not cancer, it is considered a precancerous. That means the damage has started. If you don't treat me now, cancer ho jayega. And I or any other doctor will love to have a patient at that stage rather than picking up at cervical cancer. This is called cervical intraepithelial. That means in the cell, neoplasm is cancer. In short, it is called CIN. Let me tell you a little more about this. This is what I told you, cervical dysplasia. I want to pick up at this stage, not even at this stage. Through tests, I want to pick up cervical cancer at the stage of cervical dysplasia, so I can treat it here and may not even allow it to go to carcinoma in situ. It is grouped in 3 categories. Mild dysplasia, only lower 1/3 of cells in upper layer of cervix are abnormal. Moderate to marked dysplasia, up to 2/3 of the layer contains abnormal cells. And CIN3, severe dysplasia to carcinoma in situ. These two are difficult to differentiate one from other. So pap smear is one test which every woman should do. I'll tell you when and how. Now just see, this is the procedure. This is the lady lying down. This is the uterus. These are the tubes. This is the vagina, and a steel speculum has been put in. The doctor's hand has put in a brush. There are two ways. Either there is a wooden spatula which is scraped on the cervix and scraping of cells taken, or a brush which is rotated within the cervix and cells picked up. These are put in the liquid and sent for analysis. To show you better, this is the cervix. These are the abnormal cells. This is a wooden spatula. You know, it's something like when you take a vanilla candy, that stick, wooden stick, something like that, not that, but something like that, this shape, which is used to scrape the cells from here. So pap smear can diagnose right from carcinoma in situ, it can diagnose dysplasia, can diagnose a full-fledged cancer, and if it can pick up a dysplasia, patient can be treated immediately. The findings can be divided in 5 categories. Group 1, no evidence of abnormal cells. Pap smear is normal. This is the picture. Group 2, atypical cells, no evidence of malignancy, moderate dysplasia. You see, upper layer is normal, but these up to 2/3 of the layers are showing moderate dysplasia. Group 3, suspicious cells, severe dysplasia or carcinoma in situ, but with this kind of a pap smear, other tests are required, which I'll be telling you in detail, or other speakers will be talking, colposcopy or cone biopsy. And group 4, definitely malignant cells, which are going outside the thing, invasive cancer. And here also further investigation and treatment is a must. Showing you again, normal, moderate dysplasia, severe dysplasia or carcinoma in situ, and cancer which has spread outside. What are the signs and symptoms of cervical cancer? The early stages of cervical cancer, patient has no symptoms. If we wait, not only for cervical cancer, if for any cancer, if you wait till the patient has complaint, that is already very late. Patient may have erosion, that is why we want to do a pap smear. Then the commonest symptom is vaginal bleeding. Vaginal bleeding outside of menstruation. Contact bleeding, or rarely a patient may feel a vaginal mass. You know, why, as I said that women neglect themselves, I must tell you here, unfortunate story of a lady who was very educated, retired air hostess. She was diagnosed cervical cancer, and there was the mass which was size of a table tennis ball coming out of her uterus. When she was asked the history, almost for 1 year she had abnormal bleeding. And when you said, ma'am, why didn't you go to a doctor? No, my children were appearing for board exam. That is the reason we want ladies to take more care of themselves. This is rare. Vaginal mass present the malignant, indicate the malignancy presence. moderate pain during sexual intercourse, which was not there before, and vaginal discharge, which is not responding to treatment, can also suggest cancer. Advanced disease, if the disease is advanced, then metastasis, distant spread may have occurred in the abdominal cavity or in the lungs. Advanced cervical cancer, I am just listing. I hope no ladies diagnosed advanced cancer, because that is very, very difficult or challenging to treat. Loss of appetite, weight loss, tiredness, pain in the lower part of abdomen, all the way to pelvic, back pain, leg pain, one side swollen leg, heavy bleeding from vagina, not stopping with treatment, not able to control urine or stools, and that too from the vagina, and bone fractures without much injury. A lady who sneezes and breaks her ribs, that kind of fractures. Then I must introduce you to a new concept called HPV, human papilloma virus. Cervical cancer caused by sexually acquired infection with certain type of human papilloma virus. Now, as we said that you cannot pinpoint what causes cancer, but there are certain viruses which cause cancer. Commonest is hepatitis B virus, which causes liver cancer. So there is this virus called HPV, or human papilloma virus, which is transmitted by sexual intercourse, and this causes cervical cancer. Now, understand the difference between the two. You always may feel that if a young person gets disease, then they have immunity to fight. It is wrong. Age-related cervical cancer may occur in late 40s, early 50s or 60s, and is not so bad, but HPV-related cervical cancer will occur in young women, early 30s, and is 10 times more aggressive than the age-related cancer. So, what is HPV? HPV is transmitted through sexual contact, and most people are infected with HPV shortly after the onset of sexual activity. Who's more at risk? Men or women who have many sexual partners have a greater risk. Now, a married man may have contact with several women, but his wife is having relation only with him. She is having as much as relation with multiple partners. So this man, if he passes HPV to her, she is more at risk of getting cervical cancer. So it is not the sexual habits of one partner, it is the habits of the other partner which can affect you adversely. And it is not only in women, it is also in men. So HPV is linked with cancer of the anus. Vulva is the area of the outside the vagina. This whole part is called vulva vagina, of the penis in men, and the oral cavity. What are the other risk factors? Who are more at risk of getting cervical cancer? Smoking. So tobacco is one. If I have to label one condition or one item which is at risk for every cancer, I think that is tobacco. All cancers, any cancer, tobacco, people who consume tobacco are more at risk. Long-term use of oral contraceptives. There are women who take oral contraceptive pills for 20, 30 years in a row because the husband does not want to use contraceptives. They are more at risk of cervical cancer. HIV infection, multiple pregnancies, too many pregnancies, like given birth 9, 10 times. Yes, that has a risk of cervical cancer. And when Dr. Sushma talks of endometrial cancer, you will see no pregnancies at all. They have a more chance of endometrial cancer. Family history of cervical cancer, like a family history of breast cancer. How do you diagnose? One is when a gynecologist looks at the cervix, they can make out there is a growth. They take the cell, they do a histopathology, they confirm it. Naked eye inspection by a gynecologist. Visual inspection, these are the two instruments, colposcope and hysteroscope. Colposcope, scope we know is looking at it like we say telescope. So kolpos is the name, Greek name for cervix, examining the cervix. Hysteros is the Greek name for uterus, so examining the uterus. How we have an endoscopy for our ulcers and all, similarly colposcope and hysteroscopes. Cytology, pap smear, we pick up the cells and we study them. And ultimately biopsy, there are two biopsies I'll be telling you, LEEP and cone biopsy. I'll be telling you more about them. So these images, ladies who are sensitive, please bear with me. Per speculum, speculum is the steel device that the gynecologist puts in the vagina. See, this is the part of the cervix, and unhealthy cervix or cancer tissue is seen like this. So when I said naked eye examination, the gynecologist will see something like this. But please do not wait till you reach this stage. Cervix seen through the hysteroscope will be seen something like this. Again, unhealthy tissue. The white is healthy tissue, the red is unhealthy tissue. Then to take a biopsy, it is known as a punch biopsy, cervical biopsy or a punch biopsy. Small pieces of cervix are removed. If you see these three places cervix has been removed, this will be examined to check for cancer cells. What is the treatment? If it is the cancer which has spread microinvasive, it is usually treated by removal of the uterus. Then this is again advanced stage, lymph nodes also are removed. This let's not for you. Let's see cone biopsy. If I pick up early, if I pick up in severe dysplasia, if I pick up in carcinoma in situ, then it is called a procedure called cone biopsy. You see, this is the cervix. A conical piece is removed. A cone piece shaped area of tissue is taken away, and this is examined again for tumor. So this serves two purposes. One is it's a biopsy, and if it is carcinoma in situ, it serves as well as a surgery to remove the cancer. Cone biopsy is advised if a patient has symptoms that could be caused by cancer. It's also a treatment. As I said, it becomes a treatment for severe dysplasia. If left untreated, these abnormal cervical cells or dysplasia might progress into cervical cancer. Cervical dysplasia, what is the treatment? Loop electrosurgical excision procedure called LEEP. Currently one of the most commonly used procedures to treat high-grade cervical dysplasia. See, they are removing the cone of tissue like this. See this from here. This tissue is removed through electrocautery. So this is the uterus, this is the cervix, and I have abnormal tissue here, which not yet proven to be cancer, but severe dysplasia or what are called as erosions. This is a cryosurgery probe. Cryo is cold. They take a probe and they freeze these tissues. Freeze them, either they are burnt or nowadays they are frozen by nitrous oxide and then removed. This is the cryosurgery probe treating this dysplasia. So you see before and after this thing. So this is, as we say, that if pap smear shows severe dysplasia, through cryosurgery probes, they can be treated and they can be cured. Where all cervical cancer meds go to, if cervical cancer spreads, they go to pelvis or distant organs, rectum, that the part of the large intestine from where stools go out, and urinary bladder, lungs, bone and liver, if it spreads through the blood but never spreads to brain. How do you prevent it? Now the last slide is the most important. Pap smear. Every girl and woman must do from the time they become sexually active every year. In our country, it is very sad that if you go to a gynecologist and you ask for a pap smear, they are not ready, they call you next day. But there are a lot of diagnostic centers. If you go there, they will do pap smear on the request. In America, there are kits available that a lady can sit in the washroom, collect a smear herself and send in the courier. But it should be done every year. If 3-year pap smear is negative, you can drop for a year, but don't take much more chances than that. And then HPV vaccine is available, human papilloma virus vaccine, quadrivalent vaccine. In India, it is available. Overseas, even 9-valent is available. Their schedule is 0 day, first dose is 0. Then from first date, 2 months, and from this date, 6 months. This is a lifetime protection. It is a slightly expensive vaccine costing 3,500 each dose, but I'm telling you, it is worth the money spent. Even if you are very sure that there is only one sexual partner, still HPV vaccine is a very strong recommendation to prevent cervical cancer. Even see, World Health Organization goes up to say that 99% of cervical cancers are due to HPV. So I am saying, even if you are sure of yourself and your partner, please, below the age of 45, you have to take HPV. Above the age of 45 and below the age of 15 years in India, it is not recommended. Some authorities say even from 9 years, a girl can be vaccinated. That is all from me. I will wait for questions later at the end of the talk.
Thank you, Dr. Asrani, for such an insightful session on the basics of cancer, metastasis, apoptosis, even cervical cancer. It was really great. Just this is for the audience. As told earlier, I'm just reiterating that such kind of insightful content will be available on our Facebook and our Instagram page. So please follow us on our Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/lifecounts, and also our Instagram page, which is www.instagram.com/lifecounts. Please do follow us. Now I would be handing over the control, but before I do that, let me introduce Dr. Sushma Jaiswal Meher, who is our next speaker. She's a BHMS by profession. Dr. Sushma has a varied experience, and she just told me that she has completed 20 years of clinical practice, which is a huge amount. So kudos to her. She has successfully treated various individuals and has been conducting various wellness trainings across these years. She has also done her MS psychotherapy, allowing her to understand the psychology of individuals and guiding them to better towards wellness management. She has also done her PGD in hospital and healthcare management. This facilitates her in dispersing her knowledge better, in conducting her sessions better. And to add up, Dr. Sushma has also successfully completed her program on enhanced leadership capacities and potential among professional women from IIM Ahmedabad. So, Dr. Sushma, I will hand over the controls to you. She would be taking the session on uterine and endometrial cancer. Dr. Sushma, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Anisha, for the introduction and a very warm welcome to everyone. My topic for today is, I'll just share my screen. uterine and endometrial cancer. Before we go to what causes it, I would like to touch upon a few facts that whether they are same or they are different. They are often confused with what it is. Just a sec. Sorry for the technical glitch. My slides were just running away. So I want to touch upon that. What is uterine and endometrial cancer? They're often, spoken in synonym. Uterine भी बोलते हैं, endometrial भी बोलते हैं. So sir already spoke about that the neck of the uterus, below that the lower end is called the cervix. The upper part of the uterus is called the body of the uterus. And the endometrium is actually the inner lining of the uterus. When we talk about cancer of the uterus, we usually mean cancers that start in the body of the uterus. This picture we have just seen. So just I would like to highlight that this is the endometrium. If you can see this part is the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterus. Just remember this myometrium, I will come to it, and the body of the uterus is this. So endometrial cancer begins in the uterus, that is the inner lining. It is sometimes called uterine cancer. There is one more cancer, which is uterine sarcoma. That is the other type of the uterine cancer, but the statistics say that uterine sarcoma is seen only 10% of the time. 90% of the time it is the endometrial cancer. Hence, when we speak about uterine cancer, we usually want to say that it could be endometrial cancer. This cancer is often detected early as it is frequently producing some kind of the symptom, which usually is the abnormal vaginal bleeding. I will be talking about that as well. But because of this, it is very easy to detect it. And if it is discovered early, removing the uterus surgically often cures it. So, now you can see the importance of it. It is first very easily detectable because it is usually associated with the bleeding. And if someone has the bleeding and takes a proper action, then removing the uterus usually will cure it. So this is very important. It's a very important point to ponder upon. This is how it looks. It's a very crude image, but then this is how an endometrial cancer will look like. Abnormal vaginal bleeding. Now usually when you listen to this term, you feel that, okay, it must be that, it is maybe a more bleeding than the usual thing, but there are a lot of factors to it. One, changes in the duration. So usually if someone is getting it for 5 days or less than that, but suddenly it becomes more, that is also an abnormal vaginal bleeding. Getting heavier. So usually, someone is using, we know usually how many pads we are using, but suddenly it is very heavy and someone has to, use more pads. That is also an abnormal vaginal bleeding. It is not a normal, but then more bleeding, which is happening suddenly. There's a spotting in between menstrual period, which usually doesn't happen even in normal circumstances. Postmenopausal vaginal bleeding. So this are basically, this is what we will call an abnormal vaginal bleeding, apart from if any other discharge, which usually doesn't happen but starts happening. What are the risk factors? Hormonal imbalance. This is one of the risk factors which, like any hormonal changes a female is having. Longer period of menstruation. So early menarche and late menopause. So basically what I mean to say is that having more menstrual cycles in a lifetime raises the risk. So someone is starting a period at an early age, before the age of 12, and getting the menopause very late in life can be a risk factor. Never having been pregnant. So women who have never been pregnant have a higher risk, especially if they are also infertile. Age. The risk of this cancer increases as a woman gets older. It affects mainly postmenopausal women. See, that doesn't mean that it will always affect them, but primarily it is seen that it is more so in the postmenopausal women. Obesity is a strong risk factor and is linked to hormone changes. Now, in this case, the statistics says that cancer is twice as common in overweight women with a BMI of 25 to 29.9 and more than 3 times as common in obese women. So you can see the risk in a woman carries if she's obese. Gaining weight as one gets older also has been linked to this cancer. Let's talk about endometrial thickness. So during a sonography, always this thickness is reported. A thickened endometrium more than 4 mm means that more testing is needed. In postmenopausal patients, like if there's 1 year they have no menstruation, the probability of cancer significantly increasing with the thickness of the endometrium is seen. So you can understand that, suddenly there is no menstruation and then the thickness is also increasing. So there is definitely some connection. So we need to be careful about it. Endometrial hyperplasia. So just spoke about this term. So we all know by now. So it is a non-cancerous condition in which the thickness is more than 4 to 5 mm. In some cases, it gets corrected on its own. In other cases, it may be treated with DNC. But if left untreated, it can sometimes develop into a cancer. So whenever someone is getting a sonography done, we need to take care of what is the thickness, and if it is more, it is definitely something which needs to be treated. And this is the most common symptom, again, if the thickness is more, what a female would get is abnormal vaginal bleeding. How is it diagnosed? Definitely, if someone is having a symptom, a medical history and a physical examination. So spoke about how important it is that, you need to have your regular gynec visits. That's something which we need to incorporate and need to do it, because that can definitely highlight, or, a female can come to know whether the symptoms are there and what we should do about it. That is at the earliest stage. Ultrasound, as I said, that the thickness, and it can also tell us if any other abnormality is present in the uterus, in the ovaries, or in the tubes. It can be done both ways, like if there are symptoms, a pelvic or a transvaginal. The other thing, now the endometrial biopsy. So I showed about how the biopsy are taken. So this is the most commonly used test for this cancer. And while this tissues are removed, the biopsy is done, and then the study is done to see whether there is a cancer, and if there is a cancer, what is the stage of it. DNC, again, here also the product which is taken out, the study is done. If the endometrial biopsy sample doesn't provide enough tissue, or if the biopsy suggests there is a cancer but it is not clear, usually the doctor would move to a DNC. And that will be done either with or without a hysteroscopy. I'll just quickly say what it is. It is a procedure that allows the doctor to look inside the uterus in order to diagnose and treat. So there a thin lighted tube is inserted into the vagina and the cervix and the uterus is examined. Now, the below tests are not used to diagnose endometrial cancer, but the doctor may do it, like a CBC for a leukemia, a stool test for an occult blood, CT scan, MRI, PET scan, or a CA-125. But these are usually done when there is a cancer, to know whether it has spread to other organs, or if there is a female is on a treatment, whether the treatment is working fine or not, whether it has relapsed. And what is the treatment for this? Hysterectomy. What is hysterectomy? Primarily is removal of the uterus and the cervix. And this is often in this scenario along with the tubes and ovary and the lymph nodes. So it's a total hysterectomy. Can you prevent it? There's no sure way to prevent, but there are things we can do to help lower the risk. Regular health checkups, as I said, that can spot any signs of cancer and at an early stage. Get treated. It's very important. Like sir gave that example of that female, like for a year she did not look up to the doctor because there was an exam there. It's very important that you get treated if there are symptoms, and it takes a lot of time to develop. So if there are less serious changes, like if the USG shows there is a thickness, there is hyperplasia, there is an abnormal vaginal bleeding, please get yourself treated for it. Age, family history may raise the risk of uterine cancer. So can obesity. I told you, I mentioned it earlier, that overweight is kind of directly linked to it. So, like if a healthy weight is maintained, even that can be taken care of to some extent. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sushma, for such a great session. It was great to learn about the endometrial cancer, how to prevent it, what are the signs, what are the various methodologies for diagnosis and treatment. It was really insightful. Thank you. Now, I would like to just reiterate to all of you all that please follow us on our Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/lifecounts. And also, please do follow us on our Instagram page, which is www.instagram.com/lifecounts for regular updates and getting more education materials and good content. So please do follow us. Now, I would like to move on to our next speaker, Dr. Shrita Iyer. Dr. Shrita Iyer has completed her MBBS, and she's extremely passionate about advocating women's health and dispersing women's health education. Now she's pursuing this passion under the guidance of Dr. C.H. Asrani. Handing it over to Dr. Shrita, she would be talking about ovarian cancer. Dr. Shrita, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anisha. Thank you so much for that wonderful explanation. We've gotten a lot of information right now from Sir and Dr. Sushma. So I'm going to try and keep my talk on ovarian cancer short and simple and easy for everybody to immediately understand. I'll just share my screen. So just give me 1 minute for that, please. I hope the screen is visible to everybody. So now we'll just be talking a little more on ovarian cancer and ovarian carcinoma. First of all, So if you look at this diagram, the same one that Sir had shared with us earlier, we can see the ovaries over here. That is, the red arrow is pointing towards the ovaries. Now, as most of us know, that the function of the ovary, it's part of the female reproductive system, and the function of the ovary is that it produces an egg. Each ovary, there are 2, and each ovary produces an egg every month, which then becomes part of the menstrual cycle. After it goes into the fallopian tube and then into the uterine cavity. If it gets fertilized, it becomes a fetus. If not, it gets shed along with the endometrial lining. Now, sometimes there can be some abnormalities or some issues that can occur in the ovary. Amongst these are tumors of the ovary. So let's talk a little more about these tumors. Now, they can be malignant or benign. Sir already talked about this earlier, where he was talking about how some cancers are malignant, some are benign, based on how they are, what the cause is, what the spread is. So in that way, over here in ovary also, you can have malignant or benign tumors. Typically, what happens in benign tumors is they can be cysts, they can be teratomas. Cysts also can be mucinous cysts, or that is slightly thicker liquid will be there in it, or serous cysts, that is almost water like fluid will be there in it. It might become, the cyst might be there, or there might be teratomas, which might be solid. Now, these are benign, so they are not going to metastasize. Like Sir said, metastasis would be spread to longer distances. So they won't be metastasizing, but they can also cause complications. Even if they are benign, they can cause local reactions or local problems, where they can cause pressure on the adjoining organs, because there's a place for ovary, there's the uterus. Now, if the ovary ka size keeps increasing, it will cause pressure on the surrounding organs, or because of the weight of the ovary, it might increase, and the fallopian tube is a small stalk, so it might just turn on itself, causing torsion, or sometimes they might rupture. So such complications can be there in benign tumors also. So they should not be ignored. If any such symptom occurs, or if these tumors are picked up, they cannot be neglected, and they have to be looked into. But now let's go on to the main part, which is ovarian cancer. That is what we will be talking about further. These are malignant ovarian tumors which can spread rapidly. These tumors spread very fast and can cause morbidity and mortality. The death also can occur in these tumors. So why is it important to talk about ovarian cancer? Why does ovarian cancer become important? Ovarian cancer ranks 5th in cancer deaths amongst women, accounting for more deaths than any other cancer of the female reproductive system. It causes the maximum number of deaths amongst all the female reproductive system cancers, which is why it becomes very important that we talk about this and we know more about it. The incidence of ovarian cancer in India is increasing, and it has been increasing for the last few years. India now has the second highest incidence of ovarian cancer globally. India is contributing the second highest number of ovarian cancer cases in the world, which is why it becomes very important that we are aware of this disease. So now let's talk about a few risk factors. We've spoken about risk factors for cervical cancer and for endometrial cancer that Dr. Sushma also spoke about. So going back to a few risk factors that are associated with ovarian cancer. First is age. As the age increases, the risk for ovarian cancer also increases. It is rare to see ovarian cancer in less than 40 years of age. Ovarian cancer risk starts increasing as the age increases. Typically, most cases of ovarian cancer, or at least half the cases of ovarian cancer, occur after the age of 60. So after the age of 40, we need to start being careful about signs and symptoms that could possibly mean or be attributed to ovarian carcinoma. Obesity. This is something that we spoke about in endometrial cancer also. Similarly, in ovarian cancer, obesity is linked to ovarian cancer, especially when the BMI is over 30. And as the BMI keeps increasing, the risk factor also for ovarian carcinoma keeps increasing. Obesity again becomes a modifiable risk factor. So this is one way where we can make sure we are doing our best to prevent the risk of ovarian carcinoma by making sure that we do not fall under that BMI category. Never having been pregnant or having children late, that is after 35 years of age. So women who have never been pregnant or have had children after 35 years of age are at a higher risk to develop ovarian cancer. Hormone therapy after menopause, if women take estrogen progesterone therapy post menopause, that can also increase the likelihood of getting ovarian cancer. And finally, and one of the most important ones, is family history of ovarian cancer, breast cancer, or colon cancer. If there is a family history, that is, if your mother or sister or maybe even daughter has a history of ovarian cancer, the chances of a female getting ovarian cancer become higher. What is important to note over here is that the more relatives that have a history of ovarian cancer, the higher the chances. For example, if one person has, there is a risk. But if 3 or 4 people in the same family have a history of ovarian cancer, the risk keeps increasing. And another important thing over here is, in family history, it is not just the mother's side or the mother's family history. The father's mother or the father's sister also, if they also have a history of ovarian cancer, that also can put someone at risk of ovarian cancer. So family history becomes a very important part of identifying risks for ovarian cancer. Moving on, let's look at a few signs and symptoms that are associated with ovarian carcinoma. Now, this is where it becomes a little important because the signs and symptoms of ovarian carcinoma are slightly vague. For example, bloating. Bloating is very commonly seen, especially as the age keeps increasing. Bloating is something that is commonly, that you hear commonly. But if there is an increase in the incidence, or if you see any changes, that could be a sign of ovarian cancer. Pelvic or abdominal pain, stomach pain, sometimes back pain can be a sign, a symptom of ovarian carcinoma. Trouble eating or feeling full quickly. Earlier, the female could eat more, but now she can't eat that same quantity, or suddenly now she's having trouble eating, or she's getting nauseous after eating. That could also be a sign of ovarian carcinoma. Fatigue or extreme tiredness, weight loss along with that, any changes in menstrual cycle, heavier bleeding, irregular bleeding, any of the abnormal uterine bleeding that Dr. Sushma spoke about earlier, that could also be a symptom of ovarian carcinoma, which is why it becomes very important that we are aware of it. So now what can we do to detect it? Unfortunately, we don't have any proper screening parameters like we spoke about, like Sir spoke about in cervical carcinoma, about how pap smear can be done. And there is a proper guideline as to how many times it should be done, when it should be done, and it can identify in an early stage. Or when we spoke about breast cancer, we spoke about mammography and how it can detect the cancer in the early stage. Unfortunately, we don't have proper screening methodologies for ovarian cancer in a similar way, but there are ways of detecting it. One such way is a transvaginal ultrasound. We all know ultrasound, jo abdomen pe we do, wo surface se we do an ultrasound. Over here, instead, a wand is inserted into the vagina, like we can see in this picture over here. The wand is inserted into the vagina, and abnormalities of the uterus, the fallopian tubes, or the ovaries can be seen on the screen. Anybody who has been pregnant will have undergone this, because as part of antenatal check, this is always done. It is not painful at all. It is a simple procedure, just like a USG, only instead of doing it from the abdomen, the wand will be inserted into the vagina. That is the only difference. This can help pick up if there is a change in the size of the ovary, if the ovary is bulky, it has increased, a cyst can be seen. All of these changes can be picked up on the TVUS. Another thing that is, or another modality that is there, is a blood test, which is a CA-125 test. CA-125 is a tumor marker. This is a substance that increases in ovarian carcinoma. Otherwise, normally it is at some level, but in cases of ovarian carcinoma, it increases high, like it goes very high, which is why it is associated with ovarian carcinoma. So the levels are increased and associated with ovarian carcinoma. So this is a way where you can maybe identify that the person has cancer, or later after treatment also, for the prognosis or for the post-treatment relapse also, CA-125 can be monitored. Of course, if on the TVUS there is a bulky ovary seen, or a dense cyst is seen, or enlargement is seen, there are more modalities of investigation such as CT, MRI that can be then further done. We would also want to then maybe do a biopsy to identify what it is, if it is a cyst or if it is a solid tumor, because otherwise on this we might not be able to see. So what do we do, or what do we identify? It is important to identify the stage of the tumor. This can be done on a biopsy. So we identify how big the tumor is, or the extent of the tumor. Is it in one ovary, both ovary? Has it started spreading outside? Has it spread to the lymph nodes? Is there distant metastasis? And on the base of that, the tumor gets staged. It can be staged by TNM classification or FIGO classification. And like we know, stage 1 is when it is caught early, and as the stage increases, 2, 3, stage 3, it becomes more difficult to treat because it has metastasized more, or it is more invasive. Or we want to know the grade of the tumor. So in this way, we'll know if it is a germ cell tumor or an epithelial tumor, and on the basis of that, treatment can be then modified or planned for it. Now, how can we treat ovarian carcinoma? This again is important. So after staging, after we have identified the extent of the tumor, the type of tumor it is, we can then go on to planning our treatment. Treatment can be surgery. So in that, if it is a smaller tumor, if it is slightly localized, laparoscopic excision of the surgery is done. Or if the tumor is really big, if there is a massive mass, you know ki chemotherapy is not going to act on it properly. So what you can do is, through surgery, you can debulk the tumor or make it smaller. That way, then when you after that give chemotherapy or radiation, it will act better and the cells will further reduce. So that is debulking of the tumor. Then, of course, we know chemotherapy is one standard treatment that is used. There is also hormone therapy in certain cases. Radiation therapy can be given. Radiation therapy can be given locally to the tumor, to the area itself. Or then you have targeted therapy, which is slightly newer and on the basis of grading is done. Commonly, there is a mix of multiple treatments that are used, and then it's planned according to the patient's profile and the type of tumor and its extent. Now, what are the problems over here? And this is why it is important that we talk about ovarian carcinoma. Early stages of ovarian carcinoma are absolutely asymptomatic. If we fall and we can see we've gotten cut, it's bleeding, it's paining, we can do something about it. But if we don't know, we can't. Similarly, in ovarian carcinoma, early stages, we don't know. There are no proper symptoms which will tell that this is happening inside the body. So we might not be able to catch it early on, which is why when it is caught, it is most often caught late. And that's what we want to prevent. Like I said, treatment is based on a combination of different multiple treatments. But if it is caught early, treatment and prognosis is definitely better. What can we do? We can know about the signs and symptoms. We can make sure we go for regular health checkups. We can start a conversation with our family doctor, with our family physician, and speak to them. And we can make sure that we know our body and identify these changes if they are happening at an early stage and get them checked. I'll hand it over to Dr. Anisha now.
Thank you, Dr. Shita. That was a great session. Just 1 second. So, as I have, I'm just reiterating what I told you all. Please follow us on Facebook and Insta page. Our next webinar will be conducted on 23rd January. It will be all that a person needs to know about menopause. So, people who are entering menopause, or who have already reached menopause, or who are about the age of 40, everybody should view this. And even when there are women at home, even men can view this. So please do attend on 23rd January, 5:30 p.m. onwards. Also, as right now we are running a little short on time, we won't be able to take questions. I would request all of you all to please message the questions in the group which is formed, or you can even mail us the questions at preeti@inchesgroup.in. You can mail on that. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Dr. Asrani, Dr. Sushma, and Dr. Shrita for such a wonderful session. And thank you everyone for participating. Bye-bye.